Bitcoin touches on so many different aspects of society, not only from equality of access to wealth building, but from energy and secure infrastructure and the ability to build out new renewable energies. All of these things are super important, and we'll only get that by embracing the industry and the infrastructure that is built up around this network.
Okay, so joining us now on Open Book are Kyle Schneps and Matthew Pines. They are the authors of National Security in the Digital Age, Bitcoin as a Tool for Modern Statecraft. What a mouthful. I'm surprised the NSA hasn't banned both of you. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Kyle's a former U.S. intelligence officer and presidential fellow. And Matthew, if I've got this right, you're Director of Security Advisory at SentinelOne and a National Security Fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. So thank you both for being on. So I'm going to ask you both this question. Why this book? Why now? And take turns answering. Go ahead. Why don't we start with you, Matt? You're closest to me on the camera.
Certainly. Well, we wanted to bring together a wide range of viewpoints with professional backgrounds in national security and intelligence that also have a foot in the Bitcoin industry, that have an understanding of its evolution, its sort of facts on the ground relevance to policymakers. We want to sort of compile really rigorous research analysis, sort of long form assessments of these key questions that are occupying policymakers increasingly so as they try to craft both legislative and executive policy around Bitcoin and digital assets. And so we wanted to sort of put together a really solid analysis of these different national security questions and give them something they can reference.
Okay, yeah. I'm not the president of the United States, thank God. I want to keep my hair and I want to keep my smile. But let's say I was the president of the United States and the two of you are in my office and you're going to brief me now. I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I don't know why this should be considered a national security issue. But assume you've got me up to speed on Bitcoin and I understand the white paper enough to know what Bitcoin is. Tell me why it's a national security issue.
Yeah, so the first thing I would get into is I would try to explain to you that, you know, the very founding principles that upon which the United States was founded, the principles that undergird the Constitution are the same ones that the Bitcoin network was founded upon. We're talking about the decentralization of power. We're talking about equality of access to building wealth. And also self-sovereignty and the ability to secure your sovereignty and your wealth from outside attack. And so, you know, with this put forth, I would say that the Bitcoin network offers the U.S. government the ability to actually promote U.S. values 24/7 with very little effort. It's sort of a digital Belt and Road initiative, so to speak, from the Democratic side. And it's a way for us to contest autocratic regimes that are building more physical infrastructure around the world, like China and otherwise.
Okay, I'm with you, but I am. I've been told by my Federal Reserve Chairman, and I've been told by this woman, Elizabeth Warren. Have you ever heard of her? But they absolutely hate Bitcoin, and they hate all things related to digital assets, and they think that this Bitcoin thing should be killed. And it's a baby in a crib. It needs to be killed, and it will hurt the U.S. dollar. It'll hurt our supremacy in the world. What do they have wrong?
I would say the framing is wrong. The idea that the United States could kill it is, just a false premise. And so the question is, who's going to lead? Is it going to be the United States? Is it going to be the Emirates? Is it going to be the Saudis? Is it going to be Hong Kong? Is it going to be Singapore? This is a global phenomenon, a global, peer-to-peer system that the United States can't just destroy. And so the question is, how are we going to maximize our relative advantages to it while mitigating the risks? And so this is about not all or nothing. It's about being prudent, being pragmatic, and taking sort of a broad strategic view of the developments taking place globally, right? We can double down on our current strengths. We can double down on the legacy system, and that's obviously plan A. But plan A always has to have plan B. And I think we need to think about these asymmetric strategies to hedge against future risk. And so it's both a sort of offensive and a defensive move, right? China is aggressively trying to deploy their vision of sort of techno-authoritarianism around the world. They're having, willing subscribers to their model, sort of a full stack of computing, digital currencies, and a set of values that they're trying to embed in those technical systems around the world that run sort of against our both our ethical as well as our geopolitical interests. And if we're not in the game, somebody else will be.
Okay, so
And
Kyle, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
no, I was just going to add. I mean, you brought up some of that skepticism, especially we don't believe this is a partisan issue. We believe this is a generational one, and we're seeing that especially with somebody like you mentioned, Elizabeth Warren, and I worked very closely with the Blockchain Association late last year to create a counter narrative, a factual counter narrative against the Digital Anti-Money Laundering Act, the DAMLA Act that Elizabeth Warren was pushing, which was basically claiming that crypto was being used for all sorts of nefarious actions and terrorism. And we got almost 100 US military veterans and intel veterans to sign a petition and also go to DC to speak with policymakers to tell them, hey, based on our experience, this is not true. And that's kind of what the impetus for the book was, right? We were saying like, hey, these are all people you have trusted with national security issues on the ground, and they later came to Bitcoin. And now they're willing to put into writing on a wide variety of issues why they think this is important for national security. And that's the purpose of this book as a reference material for these people to be able to say, hey, I'm interested in financial inclusion. I'm interested in energy as a national security issue. I'm interested in anti-money laundering. What's the other side? And that's what this book has.
So and by the way, I'm with you guys. I'm playing devil's advocate because it makes it more fun for the podcast. I'm obviously with you guys, and I want people to get educated on why this is a tool, as you guys say, for modern statecraft. There's a book I read last year by Jason Lowery. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called Soft War. He sort of disappeared. He's intimated on X, or formerly known as Twitter, that he got a little bit of trouble for that book. Are you guys in trouble for writing a book like this?
No.
No, I think Jason's issue, was that he is actually still in the government. He's still in the military, and they have certain protocols by which, they felt I suppose they felt he was not adhering. We were originally hoping that he would be able to be part of this book, but then he had to pull out. But his ideas are certainly interesting, and I think any ideas around how Bitcoin can aid and the network can aid U.S. U.S. perspective around the world and statecraft for any U.S. allies is something that we need to start to think about. And I think he had a great contribution in getting people talking about this topic.
So it's a good segue, though, because you guys say there are 9 other authors embedded in here. Tell us a little about these other authors that helped you with this book.
Yeah, so we have a wide array of people with different backgrounds and expertise, everybody from, on the editorial team and also the authors. So we have a nuclear submarine engineer who's writing about nuclear energy and how Bitcoin can help with that. And we also have somebody who worked in anti-money laundering in the US government for many years who's writing about, what role Bitcoin plays in that and its role as a transparent ledger, and actually something that is better option than fiat and some of the other things that are used around the world. We have somebody who wrote about financial inclusion, who was a big member of the Black Bitcoin billionaires and was very passionate about that. He also helped us back when we were fighting the New York moratorium ban 3 years ago. And so there's a wide variety of perspectives, and a policymaker or a layperson can say, okay, well, I'm interested in financial inclusion, but not this or that. And so there's a wide variety. My chapter in particular is about how to win hearts and minds with Bitcoin. So, and Matt's is about geopolitics.
Okay, it makes sense. I want to step back. I've got a buddy of mine by the name of Michael Saylor, who I know you guys are familiar with. He owns, 10 or $12 billion worth of Bitcoin. He's telling people on national television that he thinks Bitcoin in 20 years is going to $13 million. He thinks it's going to be valued at 7% of the world's assets. Is he crazy? Or where are your views on Bitcoin? I get the point that we need to understand it. I get the point that the American government has to have a policy around it. But do you think that this is the our generation's best investment idea?
I mean, I'm not going to give financial advice, but from the perspective of a national security policymaker, I think that has to be a critical scenario that we keep front of mind as we make national strategies over the next 5-10 years. Because if it were to pass that Bitcoin were to monetize to reach parity with gold or even surpass parity with gold as a foundational reserve asset in the global monetary system, there will be very significant first and second order strategic effects, especially if it monetizes in an environment where U.S. citizens, U.S. companies hold at least a plurality of Bitcoin. We stand to gain relative to our adversaries who have doubled down on gold, right? They're sort of retreating to a 19th century style geopolitics as well as 19th century style sort of monetary system, sort of a BRICS-based sort of gold barter, sort of very crude sort of economic and financial system. But, we could be heading into an environment where the global sort of system starts to fragment and fracture. In that environment, where if Bitcoin were to monetize, we could either stand to gain relatively to our adversaries, or if we don't play our cards right, it could lead to a disadvantage.
Okay, so back to you briefing the president. So does it make sense for me to have a strategic reserve of Bitcoin? Should I buy my government? Should the government reach into the Bitcoin marketplace, use its fiat currency, and buy 1 million coins?
I'll give it a top line. I think it's a serious policy, right? Whether we decide to aim for a certain size is maybe a separate question, but I think establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve maybe serves 3 distinct purposes. One, it sends a positive signal that the U.S. is going to be very open and it's going to be a supportive environment for Bitcoin over the long term, and that gives businesses, that gives institutions, that gives individuals confidence to make long-term investment decisions. And so that net is very positive. On a more tactical basis, it does provide the United States with potential long-run asymmetric hedge that if there is a future possibility of a debt spiral or a crisis of confidence in the U.S. Treasury market, there is a possibility that there is a stabilization that comes from having additional hard assets. The U.S. government has reserves of all sorts of kinds for like emergency scenarios, and so I think you could make a case that establishing Bitcoin reserve, has its merits. I think you'd want to do serious analysis to understand how large and the precise mechanisms so that you wouldn't have other distortions or other instabilities. But I think it's a serious proposal.
Yeah, and I would even expand it out a little bit, Anthony, and I'd say like, not only do we want to seriously consider that, because I think it has a whole host of benefits in the face of, fiat currencies decline, but I think we need to say the U.S. needs to be a supporter of this industry and the infrastructure, the decentralized infrastructure that has grown over the past 5 years. And so we want to be supportive of Bitcoin mining. We want to be supportive of the crypto space in general so that this technology does not go overseas. And, that is something that I think we need to look seriously at, because as we all know who have studied this, but Bitcoin, and the reason we can write this book is because Bitcoin touches on so many different aspects of society, not only from equality of access to wealth building, but from energy and secure infrastructure and the ability to build out new renewable energies. All of these things are super important. And we'll only get that by embracing the industry and the infrastructure that is built up around this network.
You write about something called Defection 2.0 in the book. So describe what that is to our listeners.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of coined in writing this. And Defection 2.0 is drawing a parallel to Defection 1.0, which was during the Cold War, when we had this sort of bipolarity of power between the US and the Soviet Union. And the only people who could sort of opt out of the Soviet Union, so to speak, or anywhere, were people who had extreme access and great access to either information or elite access to power and wealth. And the West viewed that as something that was desirable, and they would accept them, they would leave and have to come to the US. And this was sort of the process of defection. It was sort of an intelligence operational term. But now, with the Bitcoin network, anybody in the world can opt out of an autocratic regime. You don't have to be an elite member of an autocratic society for the West to want you. You don't have to be subject to those sort of strictures. Anybody can say, all right, I'm going to put my wealth, I'm going to opt out of the autocratic fiat currency they're using. I'm going to opt out of this society and put my wealth and put my energy into this other network. And I think if you have enough of those people in societies that don't have the same freedoms that we do, who are opting out and not supporting those regimes, in the most basic financial sense, you have this new form of defection that can grow around the world and only help the U.S.
Let me play old school national security. I'm ancient, and I'm looking at this and saying, wow, this could be a problem for me because Bitcoin goes to 7% of assets. We start trading in Bitcoin. You guys talked about old-fashioned bartering in gold. We know that's clunky and hard to do, but Bitcoin moves. You have Lynn Alden that loves your book. She talks about Bitcoin moving at the speed of light alongside of other things. Money is finally now moving at the speed of light. I want to sanction people. I want to stop the Russians. I hate on the Iranians. I mean, justifiably so. Aren't I worried that Bitcoin is going to replace the U.S. dollar in many ways and allow these rogue players to do more commerce with each other?
I would say right now our adversaries are constructing alternative bypasses to the legacy dollar system. And that threat is real now, right? And that threat is not coming from Bitcoin. That threat is coming from sort of cross-border interbank payment systems that China is setting up, bilateral swap agreements, other sorts of digitally native cross-currency settlement systems that are explicitly about blocking the ability of the U.S. to sanction them and building their own alternative bypass to those networks. And so that risk is happening. That risk is happening now. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin. And ironically, to the extent that Bitcoin and dollar-based stablecoins monetize and grow around the world, they start to penetrate parts of the world that haven't had legacy access to sort of the correspondent dollar banking system. And so you actually can see an increase in the global dollar network as a result of a sort of a synergy between Bitcoin and dollar-based stablecoins, and have a collateral benefit that as stablecoins grow, if they're properly regulated, if they're properly reserved, they have to back those dollar-based stablecoins with, full faith and credit dollar treasury bonds. And so you could have a positive synergistic relationship between the growth and spread of Bitcoin, the growth and spread of dollar-based stablecoins, and sort of the fiscal health of the United States. I think like any open tool, though, there will be bad actors that will exploit it. The one benefit of having Bitcoin being a public ledger is that it's not a great thing to do bad things on. It's an indelible record of your criminal activities. And so there is this game of cat and mouse that plays out in offshore banking centers that are really about the on-ramps and off-ramps from Bitcoin into the legacy fiat system. And usually that's just one step of a very complicated sort of set of money laundering activities, most of which take place in the legacy dollar-based banking system, right? It's all about offshore, shell companies and people doing illegal things. And so that will always be a problem that folks have to sort of play cat and mouse game. But I think Bitcoin is a bit of a red herring with respect to that larger question.
And remember, the dollar is already highly restricted in a lot of these autocratic countries around the world, and it's already being limited. And so the Bitcoin network allows people to tap into something with something as basic as an internet connection and some knowledge that they can learn. And so when you have the dollar already heavily restricted, this offers a way for them to tap into something new that has the same foundational principles as the dollar. And that's what I think is really unique about the Bitcoin network.
The one point I would say on where I'm putting my national security hat on is that the larger digital asset ecosystem has a different ethos. It's been more move fast, break things, and especially in sort of parts of the DeFi world where you have kind of this more frenetic pace of software development and a lot of money on the line, that has been very effectively exploited by individuals, for example, the North Koreans, the Lazarus Group, to hack these, say, cross-bridge protocols and steal hundreds of millions of dollars to fund the weapons of mass destruction program. So, but it is very clear the U.S. government has a national security interest in disrupting those activities, that malign exploitation of these protocols. And I think also there is a moral, ethical obligation on behalf of people developing those protocols to try to make them as secure as possible. And so I think, it isn't just, okay, let the crypto bros do their thing and, the national security arguments are just completely moot. I think there are serious national security equities on the line here. And I think people need to be very serious about those.
All right, so we're at the point in this podcast where my producer and I, we come up with 5 words. And so this is quick I'm going to say a word, and then you guys are each going to say a word back to me or a quick sentence. It's really from your book. So I say the word national security. Let's start with you, Kyle. You think what?
Opportunity to spread American values.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
Foundation for future power and the growth of our values.
Okay. Digital age. The words digital age. Go ahead, Kyle.
I'd say a fast-moving society that needs to adapt regulatorily to something that's ahead of it.
All right, Matt, you have the harder job because he's coming up with good stuff. You gotta not plagiarize, or you can go to the next one if you want.
No, I think digital age means for me like an era of new moral and political challenges about the rights of the individual versus concentrations of power.
All right, so we'll start with you, Matt. I say the word policy.
Long-term, strategic, not short-term self-interest.
All right. Anything you want to add there, Kyle?
One word, negotiation. It is something that is between the American people and the government. It is not a one-way street down to the people.
That's well said, because a lot of people in the government didn't want Bitcoin, but the people are fighting for it. Stable coin. Let's go there, Kyle. I say stable coin. You say what?
Alternative route outside of autocratic currencies.
You like stable coins, Matt?
I think the way to dollarize the world, essentially crypto Eurodollars, a way of giving people access to a stable savings vehicle that they can't otherwise get.
It's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you guys on, because I'm always telling these politicians we need to get a stable coin bill. We need, you want to help U.S. dollar supremacy, have a digital, stable U.S. dollar out there. Okay, the last word, I'm going to let you both have the last word. I say the word Bitcoin. Kyle, you think what?
I think of the decentralization of power in the same way that we did it, fighting against the British. It is the same thing now. We want to have power structures decentralized so that no one thing can control it, especially money.
What do you say?
I say hard, fast, and open money for the future, embedded with American values.
So I think sober driving. And you say, what the hell does he mean by that? I think the central bankers have been drunk driving with this currency and this group of currencies for the last 120 years. And when I hear Bitcoin, I think a sober, let's take the keys away from the drunk drivers and make it more sober. This is a fantastic interview for me. I'm very grateful to both of you coming on. Thank you. The title of the book is National Security in the Digital Age. Bitcoin is a tool for modern statecraft. Kyle Schneppes, Matthew Pines, sort of Anglican names, so they're easy to pronounce, you two sons of bitches. Thank you. Okay, I enjoyed having you guys on Open Book. I hope you guys will come back.
Thank you very much for having us. Really appreciate the opportunity, and love that you use your platform to help folks like us.
Yeah, we got to get this book out there. So